Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Let's Talk Trackmania. As you see, we only have two moving images on our screen as Eirik Holdal is having some sort of difficulties which has prevented him from joining us for today. But however, I am joined by my other half, I suppose, in Trackmania terms. I have Turbo once again joining me as part of our experience in episode 10. And we are going to be talking about what the new game means for the old games. Of course, Trackmania is a title with so many different kind of communities as part of it, and so many different games as part of this one kind of brand of Trackmania, so to speak. So, as I said, this is episode 10. And a few things we'll discuss about said old games, Trackmania 2, other environments, things like that. But first of all, before we get far too far ahead of ourselves, how are you, Turbo?
Yeah, I'm good. Just slept very, very well this night, and therefore I'm fit. Even though I yawned before it, but I'm fit. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing spectacular. I mean, we've got a little bit of quality time alone here now. They're
Oh
not being
yeah,
bothered
yeah.
by alcohol, Dal. Not sure what's happened, Tim. We'll keep you updated if we receive any more information in the episode. But I mean, the whole basis of the episode today, as I said, is not necessarily going to be talking as much about the new game, more talking about what effect the new game has had. Now, just to kind of throw a kind of base question out there, since the new game has came out, have you even kind of touched any of the old games, like, you know, for things like TTCs or, you know, trying out TMNF again? Have you even kind of dabbled in that at all?
I mean, I've played the TTC and it was definitely fun, but what I really recognize is that the car behaves or feels different. Like last TTC, I mean, I almost went out, but in the first couple of rounds. But I mean, just the behavior of the car in the turns and everything, it felt different, and also the countdown. Oh my god, it felt like forever. But other than that, I've not really played the game too much. I mean, not to speak about Trackmania Nations or Trackmania United. I've only started Mania Planets to play the TTC. Have you touched the old games, or have you been stick to the new game in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, in the last couple of weeks, I mean, I've opened up Mania Planet, I think, for I was doing some map redemptions on stream because Riot bullied me into it. And the old, Trackmania Nations United, whichever you'd like to call it, I haven't really been as much on that even just before the game came out. I mean, I was more of a Trackmania 2 stadium person myself, but I mean, it has been kind of put in a bit of a unique situation. I mean, there's always been the talk about how the community's been split when there was just the two games, or well, with the two main games, Trackmania Nations and Trackmania 2 Stadium. So, I mean, me personally, I don't really think I would go back to Trackmania. I don't really think I would go back to Nations, to be honest. Well, sorry, I think I would maybe go back to Nations, right? Because Nations has its own kind of unique thing, so to speak. Whereas outside of kind of server difficulties and things like that, Trackmania, the new one, feels like a kind of upgrade over Trackmania 2 Stadium. You know, the only thing that's really pulling me back from that is the things like, you know, TTCs aren't fully implemented. If they will be, of course, I'm not entirely sure what their plans are. And it is more stable at the moment for we're seeing tournaments are kind of struggling to host reliably when it's in the new game, as there's still some sort of back end difficulties and things like that. But I mean, what kind of game do you think takes a bigger blow from this out of the old ones? I mean, are we talking the Mania Planet franchise? Do you think will take a bigger blow, or the United Nations franchise? What do you think kind of gets hit the hardest by this new game coming out?
I think, considering the numbers, it's definitely the Mania Planet version, because I mean, I've talked to members of my clan from Luckers who are all mainly active in the old games on Trackmania Nations, and most of them are sticking to the old game, and eventually some of them are trying the new one. But I think I see actually more Mania Planet people, like just from like my perception, in the new game than there are nations people. So I think that Mania Planet is slowly dying. I mean, there are some competitions still, like the TTC. The season is has 3 more steps, and then they will eventually trying out through talent cups in the new game. But other than that, I think that Mania Planet has taken the bigger blow in this extent.
Mm-hmm. I'd certainly agree with you in that. And I suppose, while we do have Eirik missing today, I mean, you guys have the opportunity, I suppose, to be our third member of the podcast. If you guys have any sort of information, or if you guys have any sort of questions or anything like that, feel free to hit us up in the chat. Of course, as it's now under my stream only, which is all part of the planet, so I've just scammed Eirik and Turbo. But but of course, if you guys have any sort of questions, any sort of points you want to bring up, so of course it's only us two here at the moment. As I say,
candlelight dinner. Hello.
Yeah, exactly. Candlelight dinner. But if you guys have any points you would wish to bring up that you'd wish us to discuss, or to counter our points, I mean, absolutely feel free. We'll be happy to kind of address any points you guys bring up. But in terms of if we look at the kind of comparison, right? You're saying that you think Mania Planet is going to get hit harder by this. Now, what I initially thought that was, as I was saying, is it felt like there was Mania Planet was that was the game that was kind of getting phased out by Trackmania, the new Trackmania. So do you think it's just because people stuck to Mania Planet because it was the new game, so to speak, and now they've moved on to what is now the new game? Or do you think it was maybe that they're too similar between the two of them? So if you were to kind of point at one thing and say that's why Mania Planet is suffering from this more than Nations, do you have any idea what that would be?
So I think that's actually a good question, and eventually it's the competition that you have in the new game that you've also had in the Mania Planet. And for me, Trackmania Nations was never a sort of, like, in the last couple of years, was never a competitive game. You only had casual players there, you had casual events with some prize money, but they are like 50-year when we had like a Roland IQ Cup, which was a very fun cup. But other than that, there's the EuroR and Trackmania United, so United League. But other than that, I mean, you had a lot of competitive events in Mania Planet, and you also have them now in the new game as well. And maybe this is why people are swapping rather from Mania Planet to Trackmania to the new one instead of from the old one to the new game.
I mean, we're seeing what's kind of came up from Mizu in the chat, that Trackmania United, at the very least, is kind of dead outside of the kind of leagues that they run and the kind of community competitions, as everyone stopped to try the new game. And that's something that I thought would kind of factor into how hard it would hit United and Nations, is because it's the first kind of interesting development in Trackmania for them, because they've not been invested in Mania Planet. Whatever has went wrong with Mania Planet, whatever they've not liked has put them off of it. So it doesn't really matter what you've done to Mania Planet. They'll maybe come back to play it for a day and then stop playing it. But I guess as there's now a whole new fresh game, I mean, although there is quite a few similarities, let's be real, but there's a whole new kind of fresh game. So that's a whole set of new experiences that these guys have yet to try. You never want to be that guy who, I mean, a lot of people do stay in Nations and United nowadays, but that guy who just refuses to try the new game out of almost spite, so to speak, because it's not ideal, so to speak, for how the kind of community moves forward. But I've seen even names from likes of Nations, like you're seeing some of the old gods of the game, like Poker, Karyan, things like that, indeed, coming back and playing around. I believe the Four Wheels clan, I think it was, they formed in Nations with a few other players there, having some time in the new game. And we spoke about Mania Planet being the one more heavily hit by this, but do you think that over time Nations and United will kind of go back to, it'll kind of retain its original player base, from people who were always playing Nations, people who are always just playing United? Or do you think that, while Mania Planet might get the blow now, Nations might suffer from it in the long run, perhaps?
I mean, eventually people will always play Trackmania Nations because it was mainly the game we all started with. And maybe there's also the nostalgic fact that you have while playing United and something like that. And I think that, I mean, even I can say that I could play some sort of Trackmania Nations or Trackmania United in the future again. But I think the goal for Nadia was to get a place for that to merge all the communities in one place. But of course, this can't work out because there will always be people who will remain in the old game. So I mean, we will see it in the future, and also like when the numbers will drop a bit and the hype is a little bit over. I mean, you can feel it a little bit now. We have some issues. Players are like posting on Twitter, doing tweet longers about things, which is completely fine about the record things. But I mean, now you can really see that there's the new game, and then that is of course not perfect, and guys are complaining about the game. So I'm really interested to see what will happen in the next couple of months, considering the environments of the player. Like if the player base will, go up or down on any sort of game. So what is your opinion actually about it? Do you think actually nations will die, or Mania Planet will die, like considering the player base?
I'm not sure, because I mean, the thing is, see what made because we outside of the community, shall we say, the competitive community for these games. So that's the people who are running scrims, the people who are playing in leagues, even to the extent I'll say competitive about the people who are even doing the MX knockouts all the time. You know, any sort of United Nations competitions. I think those sort of people will stick around nations either permanently, just the same as they always have done, or at least partially, as in they'll kind of gravitate between nations / United and the new game. But what I think this will really kind of hurt nations in is, you know, when you load up nations, or well, I suppose United to a lesser extent, but you open up the server browser and there's just a lot of just random people, you know, just playing the game. As Bo has written in the chat, or Olveden, to those who don't know his name, but he's written in the chat, one of the key things, I suppose, it's been free, Trackmania Nations. So you just had that initial kind of hook to grab people into, or grab people in, rather. You know, it was free. You know, there's nothing between you and giving that game a try. So with the new game, removing that barrier to a certain extent as well, I mean, we know there's conditions, so to speak, to the starter access, you know, things you can, things you can't do, you know, whatever. But new people don't really know that, I guess. They don't see that straight away. They're just seeing the game's free. Oh, I'll jump in, I'll give that a try. And you're seeing large amounts of just, you know, players that you don't recognize, players that are just, you know, on there having fun, you know, figuring out the game, figuring out how it works. And that's what I think is going to hurt Trackmania Nations. And that's the thing that always hurt Mania Planet, is that it had just an initial price point to it. So there was always that barrier between people buying or people trying the game, is just because they had to spend money on it. That's just the way it is, so to speak. So I think that will hurt Trackmania Nations in the long run, because you're essentially just going to have competitions being played by the same people, you know. And I mean, how many times do you want to face against the same team in a competition, you know? Like, I'm sure these guys have the kind of nostalgia factor and things like that, and that's also part of what kind of keeps them there. But I think it will definitely hurt Nations / United. Well, I don't think it will hurt United as much, because United's kind of in its own little bubble at the moment.
It is definitely,
you know,
I know
it's
a lot of players.
Yeah, there's nothing that really the new Trackmania has that will compare to what United then brought.
The environments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the environments and things like that. And, you know, your players who are very good at that tend to be quite different. You know, they are not all stadium players, for example. These are players that are, you know, very well specialised in all different environments. We're seeing some of them kind of leak over. Things like, you know, Grenadi, of course, one of the more popular examples, just to pick a name off my hat. But what I think this is, outside of, well, I'll say at least for Trackmania 2 Stadium, once the main kind of tournaments start to move off, so we're talking things like True Talent Cup, we're also talking, you know, say weekly races or 24-hour races, you know, the things that have been, they've kind of nailed down. I think that's going to be a real difficulty for the new Trackmania 2 Stadium to survive. I mean, do you see any kind of, like, do you see kind of Trackmania 2 Stadium becoming its own kind of community like TMNF does, or do you think it's just going to be, you know, people just hopping straight over to the new game?
I mean, I can definitely see it since you have this sort of like title packs, which I really like the idea of it, that you had like all the games on one platform and then also community made things like the ESL competition being the most famous title pack, then also the RPG one. And I mean, they feel like different games because you have different blocks in the new game. You have other blocks in the old game, of course, with like just the dirt downhill. Just think about that. It is completely different. And I mean, the biggest threat for the new game is actually if competitions, the old established competitions like a TTC, a Shitfest, or maybe even some other cups, the endurance races by spam or anything won't work out in the new game. I think that's the biggest threat, and therefore it can be like a subculture, but only to that extent that people will play the race in this game because it's not working out in the new one. So that's like my like hypothesis for the new, or like for the future. What is your opinion about it?
Well, Trackmania 2 Stadium, I think, is in a bit of a niche where a lot of people who played that were already invested in the Trackmania genre, you know, with the, you know, it was people who came from nations and kept playing it, or people who were interested in Trackmania that then bought the game and kept playing it. So I think a lot of those people are going to transfer over to the new game. And, you know, for a lot of the kind of diehards from Trackmania nations, they were quick to point out a lot of issues with Trackmania 2 Stadium, and it certainly does have quite a few issues. I think it will suffer for the, you know, because of the new game, and especially Stadium. I think things like Canyon, I think things like Valley or Lagoon will be, well, I'd say they'd be more safe, but especially for the likes of Lagoon, they didn't really have that much of a, they didn't really have that much of a kind of community to start with, with like, you know, the first day or something like that. But one thing I'm really interested to see, and I'm kind of interested to know your opinion on this. So for tech, the skills are going to be transferable. You know, the blocks remain largely the same. However, you'll have maybe new angles that will come up. Full speed, I'd imagine, will remain quite similar. But one thing that will change, or has changed, is dirt. And when we talk about our kind of holy trinity of competitive styles, so that's tech, full speed, and dirt, I think dirt is the one that will change the most through the new game. And whenever I've had the chance, I've always asked any dirt players that I've been in contact with, what do they think about the new game? You know, what are their expectations for the new game? And some of them were kind of concerned for, you know, is this going to lead to a split in the dirt community? You're going to have people who prefer, you know, the little tricks and the little, you know, inconsistencies that kind of, you know, gave nations its magic, so to speak. You know, are you going to have like a TM2 dirt community, and then you're going to have a TM3 dirt community? I mean, you've been playing quite a bit of the new game yourself, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with the changes and the kind of block structure and things like that. Do you imagine any sort of, you know, any sort of bigger impact just specifically within the dirt community?
I mean, dirt just in general feels way more different, since you are mainly focusing on like no sliding a turn or just getting the most speed out of it. So it's not more about this technical that we've seen in insane dirt matches that we have had this year already. I mean, they just blew my mind, and it could happen in the new game, but I mean, it is also mainly because of the blocks that are in the new game. I mean, we talked about that already. And eventually new blocks will be released, but I mean, till then, it will be a super hard call. Or like, I mean, how could you actually imagine yourself a full dirt map compared towards Trackmania 2?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because I've not really seen a competitive style dirt map yet. You know, I've seen dirt sections and things like, you know, your Pittsburgh Knights, and through some, you know, little random servers, you know, Nadeo tracks and things like that. But like competitive dirt tracks, at least in the previous game, have made a lot of kind of technical sections using quite a small amount of blocks, I feel, like, for example, dirt banks, uphills, downhills, going through different turns. There's not really many different angles which were used in the old game, either just simply, turning left or right. There was, say, a specific kind of banking, but now we see that it's much more customizable in terms of, how you can change up the kind of surface and things like that. So I think it will be it's a very interesting thing to keep your eye on. So what's going to happen to the dirt community going forward? I'll need to do some digging. I'll need to speak to some more people about that. And certainly any dirt players who are watching, feel free to reach out to us with your kind of opinion on that. But like, it's concerning, right? Because with the new game, you always want to have your best people playing. You want to have your best dirt people playing dirt competitions in the new game. You want to have your best tech people playing tech competitions in the new game. Like, there was always the thing, like, when what was it? The For Zero to Hero tournament happened earlier. All the best tech players were playing, but there's always someone who's going to say, "Oh, if Karyun won, then he would," or if Karyun was there, then it would be a top tier tech competition. I mean, well, that's a bit irrational. You know what I mean? Like, it puts asterisks over tournament, like for dirt tournaments when Papu isn't playing. For whatever reason he's not playing. Like, that puts an asterisk over the dirt tournament. Okay, so say Insanity won. Would he have won if Papu was playing? You don't want that separation in Trackmania and from Trackmania 2 to Trackmania 3. So, but do you see there being any sort of solution to that? I mean, say adding in some old Trackmania 2 blocks, or kind of trying to open up some sort of communication with the dirt community if they are a problem group, so to speak, one that is specifically having concerns. I mean, do you see any way that you can manage that, so to speak?
I mean, we have a different style in the game as well, by grass. I think you can combine them together, but as you've mentioned before and already, it is very limited how you can what kind of maps you can build. Of course, there are like a lot of blocks and a lot of opportunities in this game, but there are certainly missing a lot of like features, just saying about uphills or whatever, or like bank turns that are not on the road or so. I mean, I really like this road piece, but it is definitely something that we should consider. And I mean, we have the subscription model, and I was talking with Irvin before that as well. We will definitely see new content in the game. If those are new blocks, we will see. Eventually, the Dirt community is complaining about it. When, I don't know. Maybe Dirt is turning out to be good. As you have said beforehand already, you have not seen a competitive Dirt map so far. I mean, I've built some Dirt parts, and they felt good. But, I mean, I'm not the best mapper, though. But still, I mean, it is, yeah. I think if it's really bad for them, they should definitely make something happen, or should like complain about it, because otherwise they will go back to the old game, because their Dirt just felt very good and was also very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, because it was like one of the other main separations or lost opportunities I'd see that I have kind of had not the experience of, but I have spoken to people and got some kind of concrete opinions on. So one of the communities that has always had a bit of a separation already between, shall we just say, TM1 and TM2, has been the RPG community. The RPG community has always seemingly preferred the old game due to the structure of the maps that are built, due to the different kind of physics changes that are on different blocks, like, say, pipes, the little kind of ledges you can balance on and things like that. And I think these concerns have been raised, a number of times throughout the years while Trackmania 2 Stadium was a thing. It was going through its very sparse update cycle. But coming into the new game, what I've heard from the RPG people who have stuck to the old game primarily and did give the new game a try, is that they don't like it. and it's, if anything, it's actually got even worse. One of the key parts to that, at the very least, would have been, for example, when you touch a wall in this game, it gives you a speed penalty. Now, the problem with that is when you're on things like the little ledges. So, what I mean by that is there's a little ledge where you go over with 2 wheels, so your left wheels or your right wheels, and you kind of balance on that little bit of a ledge and use that to stay on, and then transition into another part of the map. So when you're on that and when your wheels are making connection with some of the wall, you get a slowdown for that. You get a speed penalty for that, which is quite a big problem. And it's one of these things that, of course, it's very unsatisfying when it happens. You know, when you crash and you get that slowdown, it's very unsatisfying. You don't like it. And I can imagine, especially for RPG players, this is like the Antichrist for them. You know, they despise it because they're used to being able to pull off, you know, the same technique in these blocks, but now they're going off of it, and now their car's just so slow, and it's complaining, and it's making them angry, and all the rest of that. So I think it's a big opportunity missed, because you had some great mapping talents in the RPG scene in the old Trackmania game, and you've got some great players, some great personalities. You've got people like Birkin, who are sticking solely to the old game. You know, a lot of the players and a lot of the people who could be contributing to this game are essentially going to shut themselves out to the old game because this game doesn't work for them. And it seems like it's such a silly thing to not work. And I don't put that to the RPG players and say, oh, you know, you shouldn't be complaining, this is fucking, you know, bullshit. But I put that to Nadeo to think, all you had to do was this one small thing, or these 2 small things, to accommodate, you know, and to reunite such a large part of your community. And that's not happened at all. I mean, I suppose you've kind of been a bit more involved with the LOL scene, I suppose, through the likes of Luckers and things like that. Is it a kind of similar feeling, do you think, for those guys?
I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. Actually, before that, I was posting something in their Discord and was asking, yo, are you playing the new game? And most of them were like, yeah, there are some competitions in the old game. And they also have their comfort zone there. They have the people where they play like daily with on the same server and like hunt maps and everything. And they don't want to try out the new game because it just behaves differently, especially in this aspect with mini LoL maps, that you have the penalty that you have said before, and also the respawning. The respawning, I mean, you have to click the respawning twice to respawn at a CP, and then you still have a cooldown like this, boom, 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 and then you just go. So it is a big thing. And also, I want to hop into the RPG thing because I was actually talking to Birkin about that, and he actually said that RPG feels completely different in the new game, also with the penalties, but in general, it feels very slow. It just, like my perception, but the RPG in the new game just feels not that good actually, because you have to really take care not to hit anything to avoid a penalty, and if you make the smallest mistake, I mean, you have the respawn, of course, but you still slow down tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the problem with communities who are so ingrained on kind of one thing that they've been doing for a while. So, example, Trackmania Nations, you know, tech players, or Trackmania Nations RPG players, is that they're very hard to please. You know, they're in a sense where, sure, if you fix these few things, they would perhaps feel like playing Trackmania more, the new Trackmania, but with it being such niggling things that gets in their way, so to speak, like, you know, things like the respawn issue or the issue with, you know, the slowdown and things like that. These people are very hard to please. You know, if it is this little one thing that messes with them, they will just go back to the old game, and it's just as simple as that. And these are people who, I mean, they're always going to, I feel like, especially the RPG community, they're always going to prefer the old game. You know, if things get, like, you know, say if the game gets less buggy, for example, Some of them don't like that. It was even the same for tech players when bugs started gradually getting removed in, Mania Planet 4 and to an even bigger extent in the new Trackmania. It's like it makes some people don't like that, and some people prefer to stay to their old kind of where you're seeing your comfort zone and things like that. But the way I look at it overall, right, I like to discuss why they do and don't change, why they prefer to stay here, why they prefer to go there. But the main thing is it's a choice. These people have the choice between playing all of these games, and that's great. Now, one question I would pose to you, now this was speculated a little bit when the Trackmania was announced, and when in the lead up to it, and it was if people would still be supporting old dedicated servers. So dedicated servers for things like United, things like Nations, as of course I'm assuming they were wanting to transfer at the very least a lot of the casual player base over there. Well, they might have seen the ingrained communities as being a little bit of a lost cause in terms of conversion, so to speak, and they're not going to be able to convert these people to, club access or standard access, because these people just don't care enough about the new game anymore, and that's perfectly fine. But I mean, if someone's going to get left behind, it would be them, or are they going to continue supporting things like Lagoon, which has next to no players? But this is going to be a question which is going to be continually brought up, I would guess, in years to come. Do you imagine that do you see in the future that, Nations might eventually just get turned off, so to speak, in a way that, I mean, I suppose ESWC was kind of forgotten for so long. Do you kind of see that happening? As much as we might not want it to happen, do you imagine that being a possibility at all?
So I think that that little to none new players will come to the new game. So I'm not sure how many active players Trackmania Nations has. I would guess maybe 5,000 a day. Maybe is that too much? Maybe like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, something like that. So not over 10,000. So I mean, there are some expenses for Nadeo at this part to host the master server, everything. And you have to say it's a free-to-play game. You have quoted it out beforehand as well. So I mean, they're definitely not winning money with that, because there's also no like advertisement or anything else on this game. So I mean, eventually it is not worth for them on the money side to let this game go. And for a title like Lagoon or even Canyon Valley, whatever, you've paid some money for, even if it's only €10. But you have supported the game, you have supported the server and everything. So they would. So my guess is that they would rather shut down Nations than the Mania Planet titles.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree. If they were going to be shutting down something, I would think it would be Nations overall. Yeah. I mean, again, not that I'd want anything to be shut down, because I mean, as much as I've always been critical of the people who do, stay to, Nations. Well, not critical, but I don't like to see it. I don't like to see people who don't like to try the new game or don't like to try, new things that are happening, That's not something I really like that much. But as I say, I kind of take the approach to, c'est la vie, so to speak. If they're happy, that's all that matters. And that's the most important thing going forward. But we've seen with the change they're making to things like the subscription model. So Trackmania is going to be more focused on, they have done this model so they can get more money. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, consistent income, yeah.
Yeah, not even just consistent income, but we think of it this way, right? So even for people who bought like the Star Edition of, United back in the day, we're talking that was, shall we say, just for example's sake, depending when you bought it, between 15 and €30, right?
Yeah, I think about 30,
yeah. Yeah, it just depends when you got it. If you got it later on sale, whatever. Trackmania 2, we're talking titles coming in between, shall we say, £5 and £15 for me, €5 and €15, whatever. So for people who are the standard access, if you've played Trackmania 2 Stadium, say you played that a few years after it came out, you started in 2015, right? So you've got 5 years worth out of that game for £15, something like that. Whereas after 5 years of the standard access for the new Trackmania, you will have paid £50. If you're going for the club access, if you're going for it yearly, you're talking £150. You know,
That's
for the same amount of time, where you've spent £15 on Trackmania 2 Stadium, or you've spent fucking nothing on the free version of Nations. So you can clearly see that they are going to be getting so much more money out of the people who stick to the new game. So if it's becoming more and more about the money for them, then it's only a matter of time, if it's not as successful as they want it to be, that they'll look at ways they can cut costs, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to be wanting to cut costs to their fucking flagship game that they're trying to throw their weight behind. They'll be cutting costs from things that they're not making any money from. So that'll be things that aren't popular. That'll be things that, you know, or that don't get them any money. I suppose that's the best way to, I mean, at least just from a pure business standpoint, because these people, if we give the example of Trackmania Nations, these people have shown that they don't really want to go to a new game. They don't want to spend more money in Trackmania titles. They don't want to go and buy Canyon, buy fucking Lagoon, or buy Turbo, or whatever it is.
Hello, Turbo.
Yeah, your namesake. You've got a game fucking named after you. But that's the way I hope it doesn't happen, right? I hope Trackmania, at the very least to an extent, is successful so that it doesn't result in things getting cut back for people who, you know, maybe don't deserve it. People are just having a fun time in the old game. You know, they just want to continue doing their own thing, whatever, you know? I hope that the game is enough of a success so these people aren't the ones who lose out, you know? That's the way I look at it personally. But, I mean, we did kind of touch on one thing as part of that, because it's not just a separation between the games, you know, well, shall we say, the generations of Trackmania. So
it's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, that's an easier way to put it. So, of course, it's not just between TM1, TM2, and TM3. We did especially have in Trackmania 2, or Mania Planet, we did also have a kind of a spread out community even in that. So you had a strong Canyon community, you had Valley communities, you even had, you know, I don't know, 2 people in a Lagoon community or something like that. What's your kind of, throughout this, I suppose it's nearly a full month, well, just over a full month the game's been out now. What's your kind of observations been as to, you know, if the hammer would fall on, you know, Canyon or Lagoon or Valley or something like that? What's your thoughts on that so far?
I mean, I've, for example, seen player like Styx. He's like very, very regular on my stream, and he is in love with the new game, and he's not that active in Valley now. Well, from my perception, maybe he's playing, I don't know. But I mean, there are, I think that from all of those smaller communities, let's actually say United as well, and also like Valley, Canyon, Lagoon, that players have joined the new game. But I think that they are regularly still playing it. I mean, you see Villa, for example, still, I mean, of course, Shootmania is something else, but he played Shootmania on the new... yeah, but I mean, they have like a player base of 10 people or 100, like 10 very god tier players, but then there are 100 active. And I think that players actually have transferred, but they will eventually come back to the old game somewhere. And
well, yeah, I'd agree with you in what you said. Sorry, you weren't finished. What were you saying?
I mean, I wanted to go for another thing, actually, with the shutdown. I wanted to mention Mario Kart Wii, for example, because the Wi-Fi connection got shut down in 2014. Maybe some of you remember. You could have played the Wi-Fi service online, like the Mario Kart Wii thingy. But then the community have made like its own Wi-Fi connection, and I think that this would actually happen to Trackmania Nations as well. That we would have community people who will create a server with new records and everything, and people could play together there. Actually, I think that's a valid like solution for the Nations people who still want to play Trackmania Nations online.
See, I think that's a nice idea, but we saw the issues that ESWC went through to kind of bring itself back into at least some sort of relevancy, but that kind of all seemed to get its death toll by it seemed to be absolutely murdered by the new game. But
yeah, it was just to stall the time to the new game, kind of.
Yeah. It was just a burn time. That's what ESWC was for. But you saw a kind of community. The community drive to get ESWC back was there, but it took a long time for that to happen. There was a long time that people weren't figuring out how things worked. And I'm not saying, speaking to these people having, they didn't know what they were doing or they weren't committed enough. It's just it didn't seem to be that either the task was taking them quite a while or, it just simply wasn't a priority for everyone, to have ESWC back. So you think then that if Nations was to go down, that it would result in a significantly higher kind of push to get that back in, do you think?
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, I've still talked to people when I played some ESWC as well. I mean, I started with Nations. I've never played ESWC before that, only the tracks and Nations. But there were people, I'm still playing this game for, I don't know, 15 years now. And I think there are like a handful of people that are still active in this game. And if you compare it, let's say ESWC came out 2005, 2006?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And Nations was 2007, 2008, something like that, right?
I think so.
Around like that. So if we go like 10 years from each game, from the release back to ahead to the player base, the Nations player base was tremendously higher than the ESWC player base. Also, because of some issues that we've had with running on Windows 7 or Windows 10, but also that Nations was just the superior game just afterwards, was free to play, and ESWC was standing in the shadow of Trackmania Nations, from my perception, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. I mean, when we look at the, as I said, the old titles, I mean, I suppose the problem with, say, we can't even isolate this just to Nations, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, Nations, Stadium is one of the environments of Trackmania United, So you can't just shut down one environment,
Yeah, that's a bit weird, yeah.
If it goes, I reckon it would all go, So Trackmania 1 as a generation would just go. And I think that would be quite a serious loss because, fair enough, right? For Trackmania Nations Stadium, you have Trackmania 2 Stadium. There might be some minor, issues, things you might not like about that, but they're roughly translatable. They're roughly, they're close to being the same thing, right? But you've got things on United like, Desert, Coast. I suppose Desert, you can kind of loosely look at Canyon as being a spiritual successor, even though the physics are nowhere near the same.
Yeah,
they're orange, fair enough, whatever. But you've got things like Coast, you've got snow and things like that.
Should I help you with the environments? Or?
Well, I wasn't planning on listing all of them, but but the thing is, these are all unique. Apart from the little kind of Trackmania 2 remasters they've done of them, so to speak, these don't exist supported in some sort of other format. Whereas in the new game, you've got things like Valley, Lagoon, or Canyon. They're unique in their own right, with exception of Turbo. So your namesake again, I don't think I'm forgetting that. But you can't really just get rid of one of the environments for that, because that means United doesn't work as well. I mean, its solo campaign has stadium maps in it. It doesn't work as well, So that's a bit of a difficult kind of problem to deal with, so to speak. But with coming the new, do you think United as in general might be in danger at all, or do you think that kind of gives it that little bit of security?
That they have paid for the game, or what security? I was a little bit distracted by the joke that Phoebe pulled in your chat.
Get down it, Phoebe. Yeah, so I'm getting distracted. The chat's getting distracted. It's okay. We're all good. But the question was, do you think because United, as I said, you can't just get rid of Nations without getting rid of United, because United just doesn't work on its own, so to speak, without United. So do you think that gives Nations a little bit of security, since to get rid of one you kind of need to get rid of all of them, so to speak? Or do you think that just means there's more on the chopping block and there's more people who should be scared?
I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but you have the Nations and United like tick in the menu, and I think they can definitely get rid of only Nations. But this doesn't mean that Stadium as its whole is dying, because you can also play Stadium maps on a United server.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it gives the security, but it is United having way less players, and therefore the expenses are way lower. Than for United, for Nations, where the game is just free to play. Everyone can pick it up, and we still have servers with 40 people. And I mean, and yes and no, kind of, because we don't have that many players in Nations. Like, I mean, compared to what's other games, it is not that much. I mean, I would actually hear about this from the chat, because I think it's a good question where you can really interpretate a lot of things. But what is your opinion about that? I mean, I'm just throwing a ball back to you, but I mean, your questions are just super good. So I just want to give that question back to you.
What can I say? Super good questions. That's my job. That's what I do here. But before I get too carried away, before I get, too much of an ego into my head, I think that as long as the new game is successful and as long as Nadeo are interested in supporting the new Trackmania, I think that should translate to the old Trackmania as well. We're all kind of part of one big dysfunctional, ugly family. That's the way it is. Some of us are quite distant, and we don't talk to some members of the family. That's just the way it is. Some you don't admit you have, like Shootmania or Lagoon. They're the kind of disowned stepchild or something like that. But you have. We're all kind of part of the one community, if the game's getting supported, what is the whole game getting supported? So I reckon if the conversation does get initiated by Nadeo, we are thinking about doing this, it's not just going to be the Trackmania 1 community that's going to be fighting back, It's going to be the community as a whole of Trackmania that will be fighting back, because people, it's nostalgia for them as well. They want to be able to go back and play these games whenever they want. That's just the way it is, But the one thing that I was kind of trying to bring into that as well, because we also have the new Trackmania 2, I say new Trackmania 2, the Trackmania 2 different environments. So you're talking things like Canyon, you're talking Lagoon, you're talking
Valley,
yeah. There was also questions coming up for the new Trackmania as to whether or not these would see any sort of translation into the new game. Whether we would see any Canyon rendition, Canyon blocks, and ability to drive some sort of Canyon environment in the game. As at least Canyon was the most successful one. Valley and Lagoon having the kind of same questions asked for them, and it seems to be that it's a possibility, but I mean, I personally am hopeful, but I'm cautiously hopeful. Do you think there's kind of possibilities that we might see some new environments getting added to the new Trackmania? Or do you think it's going to be in the same way that, I mean, they'll add like a Trackmania Canyon 2, for example? I mean, what kind of direction are you thinking they're going to go in?
I mean, we have in Trackmania United, we have the 7 environments plus stadiums, so 6 environments, and we had remakes in Mania Planet. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And in the new game, we had already Turbo being released, and before that we had Canyon. Yeah, and I mean, they're doubled up. And what really bugged me beforehand is that everything is in a different place. Mm-hmm. You have Nations or United being a standalone. Then you have Mania Planet, which was a very, very good idea, with all the games being connected, being like its own thing. And now you have a new game, apparently running only on Uplay and not on, but that's the policy between Steam and Ubisoft. But you have a new game again, so you have like 3 different spots where you can find the games. And I mean, it would be pretty weird if they if they implement it, but maybe just make a feature. Oh yeah, you can play Trackmania United like before the menu. I mean, I don't know. Would that be a good idea to implement United, for example, now into the game where you can like access United and the game will just start or anything like that?
Do you mean in its existing format as United, or some sort of United rendition, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a remaster, but maybe also the new game, for example.
Yeah. See, something I would like to see. I mean, Mania Planet felt it was kind of poorly executed at times. The menus were horrible for Mania Planet. I mean, let's be real here. We only knew how to fucking navigate them because we spend the time and effort. I think if you make the Trackmania titles accessible in one place, that's just going to make it easier for people to navigate between them, which is nice. But the only way I can really see them getting brought back into the kind of cycle, so to speak, is if we do see remasters of them done. And I mean, we don't really have a kind of a Mania Planet browser anymore for things like title packs, or which is where like the Snow remaster was coming from, or the Desert remaster, Speed, I believe it's called. Pardon me. That remaster was done, and that was just as a separate title pack. It wasn't a separate. Well, it was a separate game, of course, but it's not like you clicked on a different icon on your desktop and pulled up something completely different. You were always kind of going to the same browser, so to speak. And the new Trackmania doesn't have that. It has its places where you can navigate for things like campaigns. Whether this is something they might implement later on, I'm not sure. They need to change things up kind of fundamentally, I think, for that. But I would like to see it. I would like to see support coming in for, because, like I said, these old environments don't have replacements for the majority of them. Even for the Trackmania 2 environments, they don't have replacements. You maybe have emulations of them, things like Turbo. Turbo, again. I'm going to call that out each time I say it. But yeah, like that's it. These, what is Canyon going to be? Is it going to be a one-time release that just kind of gets left to the side once its popularity curve runs its course? And if that's the case, what does this mean for Trackmania going forward? Are we just going to see this Trackmania game just be the be-all and end-all for eternity? Or are you going to see them coming out with a new idea, a new environment, or something like that? But I don't really know what the way forward is for these sort of other environments. Like, I mean, is it going to be like, they'll bring out another Turbo again? They'll bring out another, like a Turbo 2 that will kind of consolidate all these old environments into one,
This would be a cool idea, actually.
Yeah, but I like to ask the questions, but I don't really know the answers. That's the kind of situation I am in at the moment. Like, it's
just watching.
It's difficult,
into the future, like having like or a brief guess into the future. It is definitely hard to do that, but I mean, Turbo 2 would be a nice idea with a Bay Coast Desert, something like that in there. But I mean, they have the subscription model now, and as you can see, or as you could have seen in the past, there we had how many Stadium games now? 4 USWC Nations.
Yeah, I believe so.
And then Stadium with Mania Planet, and then the new one. So they are mainly putting their focus onto Stadium, of course. So I doubt seeing I mean, we've seen Canyon being competitive as well as some other things. Now, Turbo, okay, not maybe, but we had some competitions there as well as in Canyon. It was pretty big back then in 2011. Yeah. But I mean, they're mainly putting their focus on Stadium, and I doubt that a new environment would be as successful as Stadium. I can't see that one coming because they have to relearn it or to learn a new environment, and this maybe is not motivating for people who have put 10,000s of hours into Stadium and have mastered it.
So I mean, I kind of believe we've kind of almost kind of run our course with this sort of thing, but like just to kind of get an idea of the future, do you imagine in say 5 years' time, right? We will still only have the Trackmania as we know it at the moment being supported? Of course, not talking about whether they're going to shut off old games or not, but do you think this game that we're playing now will be the only one they support? Do you believe they might try some other titles in future, like I'm saying, a Turbo 2 or or a new Snow, a new Coast? I don't know. Like, what do you think in 5 years' time?
I mean, just with the subscription model, for me, it means that they put their time into the new game that has come out now.
Mm.
So that this is the end of the journey that we've had. So, I mean, they have released plenty of games, like with Mania Planet 2, 3, and 4 included now, but they all kind of didn't get the hype they wanted. So, of course, they have to like address a different kind of audience, but this is more like marketing, because we all know here, all who are in the chat, we know that Trackmania is a very great game, and I mean, and that is also like ready for esports. But they have to change things. If it's a new environment, a new game, or anything, I doubt that actually. But I mean, they could also release something like Turbo 2, where we have an arcade racer for the PS5 or anything else. I don't know, or the PS18. Or I don't know, man. Something like that in the future. So it's a very, very hard question. Also, to like, I mean, I'm 27 in 5 years. I'm
Boomer.
almost old then, man. So not even sure if we're around in the community at this point. We never know. But I mean, with the subscription model, I think that they will rather, or like most likely, just work on the game. What is your opinion, man?
Well, the way I looked at it is it's really hard to say what we'll kind of see in 5 years, but you don't see this kind of approach taken in many other games. There's one comparison I can draw to that has a subscription model and attempts to go with the same title for quite a while, and that's iRacing. So for those who don't know it, it's a very popular sim racing title, which utilizes a subscription basis. You need to pay every month, every 3 months, every year in order to access the content. If you don't have a subscription, you can't play the game. But the thing is, right, with Trackmania, this is a question I was always kind of keenly wanting answered. So, in iRacing, their way of updating it, they'll bring out new graphical updates, just the same as Trackmania might. They'll bring out, maybe new UI tools, or they'll bring out, say, new little bits of, optimizations or something like that. But what they'll be able to do, which Trackmania kind of won't, is if they want to update to bring new interest into the game, they'll release a new car, they'll release a new track, they'll bring in a new series or something like that. I don't really think Trackmania has that kind of potential to. It doesn't have as many ways it can upgrade itself, right? It doesn't have that many ways it can stay interesting, right? And Trackmania is such a community-driven game. So think of the tournaments we've played in the years gone past. Even I can think of the tournaments I've played in the years gone past. So, I mean, 2016-17, for example, all of the tournaments were community run. All of the maps were community made. All of the tournaments were casted by members of the community. There was almost no Nadal involvement whatsoever. And going into this new game, you will see a little bit more involvement from Nadal, but you'll still see community-made tournaments. You'll still see community-made maps. Like videos and things like that are all made by members of the community. So what can Nadal bring to the table which will say to you even in 2 or 3 years' time that I should still be paying for a club edition? I should still be paying for a standard edition. I mean, 3 years' time, I'll be able to look at it and think I'll be looking at Trackmania. Say I've bought Club Edition for 3 years and it's been £60. I'll be looking at that thinking, right, what have I got for my £60? Like I can look back in Trackmania 2 Stadium and say, like that was £15 for me, and I got to enjoy years worth of community-made maps, worth of. Yeah, exactly. A year's worth of community-made tournaments and things like that. I'm going to be able to say the same thing for the new Trackmania, except I'm going to have I'm going to have quadruple the price for it. So that's what I'm thinking. In 3 years, what are Nadal going to bring to the table that will say to me, okay, I should subscribe for another 3 years? Because the year term and the 3 year term are going to be the most important points, because that's when these people's subscriptions are going to run out.
Indeed.
Like, I mean, blocks are made by the community, like almost everything in this game is made by the community. So you can bring new blocks, but the community would have probably made them in anyway. You can bring new tracks. The community's made thousands more tracks. you can bring a tournament. The community's brought fucking tens of tournaments. So that's my concern looking at this game even 3 years from now. Like, am I still even going to be interested in it? You know? I mean, I suppose that's kind of a part of an argument we've not really spoken about. I mean, what, if anything, do you imagine them updating going forward in Trackmania? Like, that will justify continued investment through this new whatever you call it, this new system, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it a bit, so first of all, isn't it a bit paradox that you pay €60 to Nadeo, who are like have little to none influence, as you've mentioned beforehand. Most of the maps are by the community. All the other things are mainly from the community, and you are paying €60 per 3 years that they are not bringing too much to the table compared to the community. Yeah. And I mean, what I could expect, of course, they can surprise me. It's like a new underground. I don't know, maybe some sort of leaves. I don't know, but what else you want to do? There is rain, there is snow. I mean, it will be pretty hard for them. And also new blocks. I think that this will be a case. I think we will see the first major updates when the first quarter season, like the summer campaign, has ended, and we will have the autumn campaign. I don't know. But yeah, you are definitely right with that, because they have to convince me as a consumer in those 3 years, or in this 1 year even, is it worth for me subscribing or getting the club access or the standard access again? And it's definitely, you have to negotiate there. What have they brought to the table? Is it worth it? And if not, I can always go back to the new game because I've already paid money for it, and it's a lifetime access, like you've mentioned beforehand already. So, I mean, I can only speculate here for like the updates that will come out or for the features, but I can definitely see them organizing maybe more cups in the future. That's one thing.
Because, I mean, exactly as kind of Phoebe says, with it being such a community-driven game, you can't really correlate arguments for the subscription model with content updates, because, you know, content updates aren't going to be what justifies the continued investment in the game. But what I'm thinking is, what else do they bring? What else have they ever brought to the table? You know, like, they've got Trackmania Grand League, right? So they've got their tournaments that they bring to this game. So in past, we've seen things like investment in things like Gaming Winterfest, Gamers Assembly. We've seen investment in their own World Championships, you know, through ESWC back in the days, and now, of course, in Trackmania Grand League. We've also seen, well, the other way you would look at it, how do they support the game? How do they, you know, keep the game running smoothly? Things like that. How do they optimize it? But let's be honest, a lot of these points, they've not really been that promising of it the past few years. There's been always been complaints that Nadeo don't really feel very in touch with the community, that updates were going very slow in Trackmania 2, and when they were
script.
when they were coming, they were breaking more things than they were fixing. You know, like, it's crazy to think that arguably, shall we say, 2015's Trackmania 2 Stadium was better working than 2020's Trackmania 2 Stadium.
This is so sad.
Yeah,
it's so sad.
You shouldn't be able to say that, you know. But that's just the way it is. But here's the way I'm thinking of this, right? So, for me, they need to bring more than Trackmania Grand League to the table, right? So this either means they need to put more into their tournaments. So that means supporting more online tournaments, more offline tournaments. Like, they can't just pump all their money into Trackmania Grand League, you know, throwing money at streamers so they play the game for like fucking 2 days, or, you know, throwing money at some other streamer so that they'll like get involved in casting, you know, Trackmania Grand League. In the same way, like, they've not got as big of a team to run the kind of support that people will feel will justify such investment time and time again, you know? Like, like, as I say, I don't know the answer to this. That's just questions I like asking. So it's I don't feel Trackmania is that kind of game that this system suited in the first place, you know? So what I think that means is in a few years' time, you're going to have people that are going to be kind of getting bored of the game. You know, they're going to start questioning why they're still paying 10, why they're still paying 30 per year. And I think that's going to mean that instead of them just being able to sit in this egg like iRacing have done and just sit in that for years and years and years and years, then you're going to have an issue with that. You're going to need to do something to keep people interested in it, and that's the way I see it at the very least. I mean, sure, you might have these kind of people who are going to, you know, keep investing in. I mean, even if it just even becomes a routine for them, or because they are still interested, they still find what they want from the game. But I mean, personally, I looked at it from my point of view. Of course, I'm a competitive player. I cast tournaments. I want to see more interesting things coming within the next few years. Otherwise, I'll think, I mean, I'm just seeing the same things I saw in 2016, 17, 18. So why am I paying 4 times the amount of fucking money for it, you know? It always does come down to the question of the wallet for some people. I mean, I know that Trackmania is just more than just about money, of course, and it's kind of the enjoyment you get from it. But I don't know. The simple way I looked at it is it's going to be interesting times ahead in the next few years. I mean, whether they decide to focus on any sort of updates to the game, whether they're even bothered about justifying the price, the price point, or whether they're just going to focus on whoever is staying, so to speak. But I don't really know. I think the next few years are interesting for Trackmania as a collective. It's going to be interesting for the new game. Going to be interesting for Trackmania 2 and all its different environments, and Trackmania 1 as well. The original generation. It's going to be quite a few years, I think. But as much as Eirik, if he was here, I'm no doubt would be telling me that we as a podcast are really good at looking at the bad side of things, you know.
Yeah.
And I do think that what this renewed interest in the game does bring a good amount of positivity going forward, and it brings hope, which a lot of people are fucking running out of hope with the game, you know, with it being out so long and essentially stagnating at some point. But I think there's good things ahead. It's just going to be, you know, good things for. It's not going to be good for everyone, I don't think, but there's definitely going to be some people who are going to have a place in this game in 5 years and 10 years from now. I think there is still going to be a lot to do going forward. But I mean, that was kind of all I really had in the tank for. Or, you know, is Trackmania going to be left in the dust, so to speak? So I mean, unless I'm going to grill Turbo's brains for another few minutes. I mean, if you guys have any points, of course, you wish for us to bring up, please let us know. Was there anything else that was tickling your brain about this kind of situation, so to speak, this kind of topic?
I mean, Writer said something in the chat. I think this is the deciding year for Trackmania. And actually, when the game was announced, I was speaking to a lot of people, and they actually said the exact same. So this is like, we will see in what direction it goes. And also, what is the problem here is maybe the factor of marketing from the game. Because, I mean, they had the chance. Bigger streamers were playing the game. But, I mean, you were talking about being bored after a while. Why not focusing on the core community in that case? Maybe, for example, give them €50 for the prize pool of a cup, or provide them with Nadeo merch, which is, I think, even possible. But also, like, help the inner community to not lose interest in the game, and just help them out. And this is really lacking, the communication between the community and Nadeo. There's no transparency whatsoever, not at all. And this really has to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot, especially when the game first came out, there was a kind of
of course.
There was quite almost some people were feeling a little bit bitter about the game and how it was like how it felt like it was forgetting the core community, you know, how it felt like some people were being left behind or some people weren't really being cared about. I mean, see our talk about the dirt community, you know, from previous about how there might be a split and things like that. As it feels like they are prioritizing just getting numbers, you know. So like when you're having streamers, or sorry, when you're having casters for the major Trackmania events, they're going with the people who would bring in the biggest numbers, like people like Sardosh and things like that, over who would be the best cast for the grand finals of your most important tournaments. You're having a lot of these streamers coming in that are having you know, tens of thousands of viewers, or some cases only thousands of viewers, getting paid in some cases, not all the time of course, getting paid to show interest in the game and expose their audience to this game, kind of trying to replicate the Zerator effect a little bit as to how he kind of showed his audience the game, and that resulted in quite a surge in interest. I think that's kind of what they've been trying to do, so to speak. But as I've always kind of said from that, you can drag in as many new people towards the game as you want, but there needs to be a core community so that they'll have a way to transition into the rest of the game. You know, like you can't just have new people, casual players, and then the very top level Trackmania Grand League, you know, because then you're going to have no one to refresh your lineups. If, you know, someone decides, you know, their time in the game's up, you know, someone has medical issues, they can't play anymore, then you need to have the catalogue of people who have been invested in this game and who are, you know, still very interested in this game. So you need to show interest to everyone, so to speak. But I think, I think it's just it's almost like when you're the older brother in the family and you feel like the younger brother's getting all the attention, you know, that kind of thing. I think that's a little bit of it. But I think it will be, I think hopefully going forward we'll see better things for the core community. You know, you've got the hype period, which is giving people the chance to get involved and things like that and have fun and, you know, find the game. It's had its hype, you know, but now's the chance for you to start supporting your community. You know, that's the way I see it. The core community is eventually going to be the most important thing there. But one of the questions we got there, just as we'll kind of round things down a little bit, do we think the price for subscriptions will drop in a few years, or will they stay like this for quite a while? What are you thinking, Turbo?
I mean, I guess we already got the answer in the chat. If we go on Steam, you type in Trackmania United, you see the price. So I doubt that the price will get changed. So yeah, it is still €30, if I recall it correctly. So they will most likely not. Trackmania United, let's actually, it is still €30. So I doubt that they will change it. I highly doubt it that they will change it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that field as well. I don't think it will really make much sense for them to change it. I mean, I think maybe there'll be opportunities for little deals and little, you know, things like that. But I don't think they'll end up changing the fundamental kind of what do you call it? The fundamental price point of the subscription as a whole. But I mean, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in the next few years? I mean, who knows where we'll all even be in the next few years? Like whether
Maybe
we'll still.
Thailand.
Yeah, well, no, we'll be in Thailand next year. That's what's going to be happening. But yeah, it's like I said. I mean, well, we might focus a little bit upon the negative things. Well, what's going to be happening in Trackmania? It's I think it's at the very least going to be interesting, right? There's going to be things to look forward to. There's going to be things to discuss, and there's definitely going to be more content for our future episodes, at least. And let's be honest, guys, no matter how much Trackmania fucks up, you're still going to have us to come in and, you know, doom and gloom it and, you know, shit on its head and kick it while it's down, you know, all the rest of that good stuff. Or occasionally you might find Eirik, you know, being the voice of reason, or just being, you know, the playing devil's advocate just to fuck with us, you know. Like, we're still going to be here in some fashion. If it's part of Let's Talk Trackmania, which I certainly hope so, then yeah, we'll still be here for times to come. But
Indeed.
one important thing for our future episodes, we will not be here next week, I believe it is. We are going to be skipping a week, as we will have key members, the most important key members of our production team, who will not be available. But we will be back, I believe, in 2 weeks' time with a new episode, and hopefully fucking Eirik showed up by then. I mean, it's been radio silence for Eirik. We know no more than
online.
You. Yeah, we know no more than you guys. He's not messaged us anything on Discord. You know, I don't know. He's probably fucking asleep at a train station if Lillehammer's anything to go by. But that's been everything from me. At least for me, Turbo. But I understand you had a little bit of a project you were working on, which you would like to inform the community of.
Yeah, so guys, I am organizing a cup at the moment. So I'm organizing it, and you can check out all the information on my Discord server. So I link my Discord server here.
Of course.
Because it will be a multi-style cup with 4 self-built maps by me. Price pool is €100. And it will be on the 22nd of August. All the other information you can find there. So if you're interested in that, make sure to join my Discord. I will also publish it a little bit more. But yeah, other than that, I really enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun, despite we were on a dinner here, on a candlelight dinner, with Eirik being the silent guy in the background. But yeah, thanks. Yeah, but thanks again, Aaron, for your time that you have streamed this one, and also to you, Paul, that we had a nice talk today. It was really fun. Thanks for all the people who joined. And yeah, guys, what do you think? 3 or 1 stream?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
last question.
Course. Yeah, if you guys enjoy it being more than 1 stream, I've personally enjoyed it because, I mean, before I didn't really read anyone else's chats anyway. I was kind of a bit lazy that way. I just had my own chat open. I'm only speaking to my people. I'm not speaking to your people. You know, but I personally like it a bit more. And it's not just because it's all in my channel, guys. Before one person says that, I'll ban them from the chat. I'm the one in charge now. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. Of course, the VOD will be available, Coronel, not to worry at all. That will be absolutely fine. Of course, just keep an eye on Twitter for things like, VODs being up, new episodes being announced. Of course, as I said, we will only be taking a break for next week, hopefully. As I say, we'll keep you guys updated, though. Any changes to any episodes, I mean, we'll keep you guys updated if we find out Eirik's alive at some point. But that's been it from us two. Oh, one more thing. Okay.
As someone has asked about the VOD on YouTube would be nice. Yeah, I will upload the VOD on YouTube. So you can check out my YouTube channel. Just type in LuckersTurbo on YouTube. And then you will find a handsome man with long hair on this profile picture. And there I will upload the VOD. Hey, and you can also find it on your Twitch VODs.
I can see a handsome man with short hair right in front of me. I mean, come on now. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for everyone subbing in to be our 3rd member of the podcast here, for fucking useless Eirik being somewhere out unknown. But thank you very much for everyone getting involved and, of course, giving us some more to talk about with today's episode. But this has been episode 10. And, of course, hit us up on Twitter or hit us up in Discord or anything like that if you guys have any sort of topics you wish for us to address. Of course, otherwise we'll just pull one out of our ass anyway. But it has been a pleasure, guys. We will see you not next week, hopefully 2 weeks' time, hopefully with a full roster. If not, you can sub in for us once again. But it has been a pleasure, guys. We will see you all later and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.
Goodbye.